This is the Infrastructure Matters podcast, brought to you by the Futurum Group. We explore the latest developments in hybrid cloud computing and the technology that underpins it. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the latest trends and technologies that are shaping the hybrid cloud computing landscape. The Infrastructure Matters podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. Please do not take anything reflected in this show as investment advice. Now, your co-hosts, Steven Dickens, Camberley Bates, and Krista Macomber of the Futurum Group.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this next episode of Infrastructure Matters. My name is Krista Macomber, and I am joined this week with both of my wonderful co-hosts here. We have both Camberley Bates and Steven Dickens. So a great kind of three-part episode here. And we do, so this past week, we're coming fresh off the heels of the VMware Explore event out in Las Vegas. Steven and I were both covering the announcements, and actually Camberley was there in person. So during the course of this episode, we're really going to kind of focus on that show. And we're also going to talk a little bit about, in particular, some of the announcements pertaining to kind of private infrastructure for AI applications, as well as some multi-cloud related announcements that came out of the show. So Camberley, where you were actually there in Las Vegas this week, why don't you kind of kick it off for us with some of your general impressions from the show?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have to say that this was during when the cyclone Hillary was coming all the way through. So there was all this anticipation. It's like, are we going to be able to get in there, et cetera? So we all made it there. I think, I didn't get the official number, but it was somewhere around 10,000, 12,000 people is kind of like what we were kind of estimating there, which is bigger than last year. It's not as big as it was before pandemic, but definitely a good sized crowd and a lot of energy, as we've seen in all the shows that we've been at. Hosted at the Venetian, what also is known as the Sands Expo, or used to be there. So we kicked it off with an analyst day on Monday, and had the privilege to spend time with Raghu and Sumit, the CEO and president, talking about very, very open conversation about where everything was going, et cetera. And then, the big event was the following days. But two big themes, multi-cloud and AI. Or generative AI.
They talked about AI. I'm shocked, Camberley. A big tech event where AI came up. I mean, who would have known that would have been a topic?
I know.
Falling out of our chairs.
Kind of couple, snippets of data kind of thing. Raghu talked about the fact that when they've looked at their clients, 75% of them are in two clouds and on-prem. We had a conversation with one of their clients, and was really, I can't say who it was or anything like that because it was all NDA. But one of the things that I heard is that two clouds is enough. Any more than two clouds is going to be too difficult to do because of all the staffing and everything that goes on there. So it was, kind of an interesting snippet that was there. The main session kicked off with Raghu, of course, saying, hey, 25 years, great, we love you guys, et cetera, and then went straight into the elephant in the room, which is the Broadcom. So it's kind of like, let's talk about that, get it all over, and we're going to go to the next thing. And actually, Hawk was there. Hawktown was there. He stood up and waved at everybody and that kind of stuff. And Raghu reemphasized the commitment of the $2 billion. That was emphasized in the AR event, but the $2 billion investment, and stating 50% of that is going into R&D. The other part is to accelerate the solutions, and we can kind of talk about what that means. And the other big thing is the confidence that this is going to close by the end of their fiscal year, Broadcom's fiscal year, that's October 30th, 2023. So we're pounding down on the edge of it.
Another approval, didn't they? Whilst the show was on, I think was it the UK gave an approval for the acquisition? I think I saw.
UK gave approval, and then the date for the antitrust kind of people to stand up and say, you know, we're holding this up, passed. So that was a approval without an approval. It was just the date passed. So nothing's going to happen there, or we don't think anything's going to happen. So
what was the buzz from the? I mean, obviously they're regulated by the SEC, both public companies, careful about what they can say. Did you pick up any sort of buzz from any of the attendees?
Still nervous about this, what's going to happen with both the investment and the pricing. You know, as we've seen over the course of the last year since the announcement, is clients have been locking in their licensing. You know, so there's some big, you know, we've seen some big uptick with their licensing or their SaaS contracts that have been going on, and those have, you know, looking at, you know, 2 to 3 year contracts to lock it in, so they are, you know, assured of what they have, and we'll see where things are going to go. So that's you know, that's the biggest buzz, but there's just still a lot of nervousness of what's going to happen.
It's a big acquisition. I mean, I think we've been pretty well briefed as a team, and I think our posture as a company is we're pretty bullish on the innovation, this $2 billion. I mean, I think the perspective that VMware was a fantastic bed of roses and everything was amazing and Broadcom's going to come in and change that probably is not very factual, if we're being honest. I mean, the company was growing, but certainly not at the rate that it needed to be. So I think this $2 billion investment, and obviously Broadcom's an innovative company, you know, very innovative company, where we've spent some time last week out with Greg Lotko, who reports directly into Hawk, and his story, albeit for a completely different technology, is all about inward investment, all about sort of supercharging growth and really sort of driving forward. So if that's from a guy who reports directly into Hawk, I think I probably trust that source of information maybe more than I do some of the armchair pundits out there just trying to take a pop at this.
Yeah, and I brought that point up to a couple of people, and their point back to me was that the initial effort with CA was taking out resources, taking out a lot of the extra stuff that was there. And then, but the other piece on the other flip side of it is that, you know, Greg has had a lot of investment in the mainframe technology, and they have way advanced into that area. So I think there's that one thing that says, you know, if you can rise up and you've got good quality stuff, the investment is going to happen. So you have to prove your point. So what becomes at risk is those folks that are not executing, and the one big area that we're all going to look at is Tanzu, right? Tanzu has struggled, and can Tanzu raise up to that level? But that's, you know, we'll see. They've come a long ways. They've got still more ways to go on that, and we can talk a little bit about that later on. But so I'll, you know, talk about what they've done and what they brought out. And many of these things are, you know, are core and strategic, should be core and strategic to Hawk's investment.
Well, that's where a lot of that $2 billion's going to go. They've not provided any clarity, but that's that's my perspective of where that investment's going. Well, A, going to have to go, and B, should go. So,
right. So Sumit got up after Raghu talked about kind of the big themes and everything else, and he started talking about the 5 innovations around multi-cloud. And let me rattle those off, or I'll go into a little bit of them, and I'll go in the order that he listed them, which was an interesting list, because I'm not sure I would have listed them in this order, but but this is kind of where his importance was. Number 1 was vSAN Max. Okay, storage is everything. I know that.
He listed them that way for purely your benefit, Camberley.
He did. He did. He knew I was there. So vSAN Max, and we'll have a piece coming out from Dave Raffo on this, but it's petabyte scale disaggregated storage. What is disaggregated storage? It's basically network storage. So what they've done is where vSAN vSAN has more or less been part of this HCI platform. So you had to scale compute and storage together, and they did a little bit change when they did the HCI mesh, which I could scale the storage separately. But this is taking it to another level and really creating almost its own separate storage device. It's petabyte scale. They've done some big enhancements into the data path. Expect to see these guys ship as ready nodes, so their own storage. So in a sense, I'm almost thinking they may be competing with, some of the mid-level products that are out there. I think this is all goodness in terms of the architecture. So let's say I've got a big vSAN cluster out there, or clusters out there, and I just want to have the storage device. They are going to start competing directly with, guess who, like NetApp and Dell and Pure, that have got this, the network attached storage for VMware. So that's kind of going to be an interesting play that's going to happen in that space. But that was one of the big announcements. The second one, I'm looking at my notes down here, so pardon me if I'm looking down, guys, is the vSphere Plus. I think this is the area we're going to see a lot of investment coming in, because what they did is the planning and upgrading the fleet centrally. So they're claiming like a 3 times faster upgrades with lifecycle management. And that has implications across for the customer, and it has implications for Broadcom ultimately, or the management of the service. So on one hand, they've got people on old versions and they're not upgrading, and it's difficult to upgrade. So if you can make this stuff easier to upgrade over time, people will rattle through it, and then your costs and your service support will reduce. So I think there's a big cost benefit that's going in there. So that was a significant one. That was the second one they announced. What they called a true multi-cloud networking with NSX Plus. And the bottom line on that one is define the policies once and deploy it across all the clouds. That is slick. Yeah. Really slick. And Russ, who was with me, was super excited about it. Which 5 years ago, he would talk about NSX Plus and had certain 4-letter words after the product name.
And they weren't words like good. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, it was not good. It was it had a digit before it.
Yeah, there was other vowels and consonants in that word. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. But he was quite really super pleased to see that. And just as a note for you guys who don't know who Russ is, Russ runs our lab here. So when he's saying certain words about products, it's because he's had the opportunity to work with them and set them up and run them and everything else. So that was very, very exciting.
Expert in VMware. I mean, he uses, from chatting to him, he's kind of elbow deep in that technology and comes with a practitioner mindset. So that's a good perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fourth one was the Edge Cloud Orchestrator. And that is was used to be known as Edge SASE Orchestrator or something like that. And what they're doing, and this is kind of my way of looking at what they've done, is this orchestration of the edge devices that are out there. And I need to simplify it for my terminology here, but imagine being able to take all your edge devices out there and have them upgraded and instantiated like an iPhone. In other words, the iPhone, you get on your iPhone, it's ready for its upgrade, right? So it goes up, talks to the guy goes over and says, okay, here's the stuff coming at you, here's your upgrade, and take care of it. And so it's a much more efficient way to manage on upgrades and capabilities out in, rolling out. So, I've got a little code sitting on my edge device that goes out there, it ships out there, comes out there, says, hi, I'm here, and goes through the process of updating and continuously updating. So when we think about thousands of edge devices out there, this is a super efficient way to orchestrate and manage these devices. And I'm sure we're going to hear a whole lot more about this coming out. So it was quite a bit of excitement around there. And the last big one that he mentioned was the ransomware one. Mm-hmm. And I'll pass it on to my lovely co-partner. That's not you, Steve.
I knew you weren't talking about me. That was crazy. I knew lovely. Yeah, that's not me.
I'll just pass it over to Krista because I know she's been with Russ Fellows and the lab team has
Yes.
been up to their eyeballs on this ransomware. So why don't you mention what they're doing there?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I think Camberley, that's actually the two announcements that you covered even before this, I think are a great segue when we think about the NSX Plus and kind of the Edge Orchestrator. Those both have security implications for sure, right? When we think about installing updates to these endpoint devices for security, and then also from a networking perspective, when we think about, as you were mentioning, not only kind of creating and rolling out these policies centrally and consistently, but also having that visibility into the network. So from my perspective, being our data protection and data security, individual on the team here, certainly excited to see that, as well as you're mentioning, updates to what VMware calls its ransomware recovery solution. And as you were mentioning, it was great timing for us because Russ and I actually just completed what we call an audit of the solution. So we were very hands-on with VMware in terms of spending a lot of time observing the capabilities of these solutions and vetting it from all the angles we could really think of for cyber resiliency, and in particular, thinking about some of these ransomware attacks and how they're evolving. So this is a solution that has been in the market actually since approximately the fall of last year of 2022. It's an add-on to what VMware calls VMware Cloud DR, and it has some capabilities that are specific to recovering from ransomware, because these are not kind of just your normal kind of standard disaster events that we need to recover from. They require things like the ability to create immutable data copies, which VMware provides with the solution by using the scale-out cloud file system, for example. And also some forensics capabilities to be able to kind of not only uncover that an attack has occurred, but really to kind of assess its damage and to see where has it impacted in the environment, and to be able to identify maybe what are some of the the best snapshots to recover from that are not going to reintroduce the infection back into the environment, but also help you to mitigate your data loss resulting from an attack. So we are going to be having a full kind of paper coming out on it. And I did write a blog, so I won't get too much more into the nitty gritty, but I will kind of introduce the fact that there are a couple of additions that VMware added to the solution. So it now can protect Google Cloud VMware Engine workloads. But really kind of for me, the big picture takeaway was the ability to support multi-VM recovery operations concurrently. So this is going to help to really reduce that downtime for the business by speeding those recovery operations. So those were a couple of kind of the headlining announcements really kind of coming out of that service.
Great. So that's kind of the big package for the multi-cloud. A lot wrapped in there. As I said, there'll be multiple. We've got a piece coming out from Krista. We got a piece coming out from Dave Raffo, and then Russ and I are authoring a piece that kind of goes a little bit more in detail into the overall areas that I just talked about. The second big area, so if that wasn't enough for the conference, with the big announcements around generative AI. They had two announcements on there. One of them was the private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. Let me say that one more time. Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. It's an integrated solution with NVIDIA. Looks like it's going to be available Q1, not priced yet. Still working on all those pieces. Very, very, it's another one of those systems that basically giving a nod to saying people are going to want the privacy, they want to protect their IP, they want the governance, etc., and they want to do the training on site. So this is that solution that's going to be wrapped up together, integrated not only with NVIDIA's GPUs, but also with their software. A couple big items here. Number one, they're claiming a 97% performance of bare metal. Now, I haven't seen the performance numbers. They're supposed to send the blog and the information over to me, but what they've done is some technology changes or assistance with VMs, with NVLink, and also their vSAN directed GPU capability using RDMA that integrates with the NVIDIA GPUs is between those two pieces, they're getting close to bare metal. And they said they're getting better than bare metal in some cases, so 106% performance in certain use cases, I guess, is what we're seeing. So pretty significant. Looking forward to seeing this come out the door. Jensen was on stage. I guess he had to fly from there. He went to do his incredible earnings that he reported.
Those earnings, two quarters in a row. I mean, wow. Just wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Daniel, we'll put some in the show notes, but Daniel was all over the media. Daniel, our CEO and lead analyst, was all over the media talking about that. Just what a spectacular beat and raise. And yeah, just the NVIDIA team are on fire right now, I think.
Yeah, it's what was twice the 13 billion or something like that, as opposed to 6 and whatever. It's like mind blowing that they could actually ship that much in that short a period of time. And the fact is that they're forecasting next quarter similar numbers. So just kind of like amazing what's taking off. The second announcement they had was the referenced architecture for VMware Private AI with their partnership with Hugging Face. This reference architecture is already coming out with 3 guys that they talked about. Lenovo, which you keep on giving them free advertising with your coffee cup there.
This Yeti cooler is sponsored by Lenovo.
You know what mine is? I'm not sure if anybody knows what this is. It's called Left Hand Networks.
I think there's a sponsorship opportunity.
Back in the day.
We can give people a shout out as part of this podcast. Come on, Krista.
AWS over here. So, yep, AWS here.
Watch out. I know Rachel's going to start sending me Veeam stuff. So I'm going to see her Veeam coffee cup come in a heartbeat here.
I've got so much Veeam swag that she doesn't even have to.
I feel like Jonathan's missing a sponsorship opportunity for this podcast. What do you think?
We'll have to follow up with him for sure.
Absolutely. So here, the reference architecture for VMware Private AI and their partnership with Hugging Face. Lenovo, Dell, HPE were talking about rolling out this solution with them. I had the opportunity to spend some time with Lenovo, Robert Daigle, who is over there with their box. It was a 4U box. 2 GPUs in there. We're running a large language model. They had trained the model according to the website. They had an avatar up there that we could plug in and ask questions by, and she was kicking out information, et cetera, to us. So it was, it's a real thing, very exciting. They are totally all in and very, very focused on not necessarily because I've known Robert for a while, and last I met him at supercomputing. I say, "You're going to be at supercomputing," and he goes, "No," and he's what they're focused on. Yeah, they're focused on supercomputing because they got an awesome supercomputing practice over there. But his focus is really on the big enterprise stuff, which is where we've been talking about this is going, which is so cool. I mean, it's just like this is now part of our life. And living, and it's here, guys. So there we go.
So that might be a great segue, Camberley. I was curious, when you were at the show, did you get a chance to talk with any customers about some of these kind of private, AI solutions, or maybe even just how are they thinking about integrating AI into their business, and kind of what will be some of the ramifications from the standpoint of their technology stack?
Yes, and I think overall what you're seeing them doing is they are cautiously moving forward this. So one of the folks that talked about, this is all at the CEO board level discussion. This was a kind of curious statement. There is a bit of FOMO going on, fear of missing out, and there should be, because as I've said, this is as big as what we saw when we went to transaction processing in the 1970s and 80s. And where everything went online. It was so so change in terms of an efficiency operations and the organization. So they should be jumping into this, but because of potential problems with IP, bad outcomes from training, and those kind of things, they're moving slowly, and they're looking at first initial, and you've seen this happening with when we were at Dell or whatever. First initial implementations is internal. Let's do some ones internal. Let's see how we can get them going. And I will mention that in terms of what also was announced with VMware is Intelligent Assist. So they've taken their training, they've been doing this, training these models to do Intelligent Assist for upgrades and service assistance with clients. And that includes, I believe it was Tanzu, NSX, and Workspace ONE is the first three that they were talking about. Amanda Blevins was on main stage talking about that. So it's, I'll pass, go to you, Krista. You're about to say something.
No. It's I was just going to add that I think another application for that is increasingly going to be cyber recovery. So Rubrik at the show had an announcement on sort of utilizing Microsoft's AI capabilities on kind of a cyber recovery solution there. So I think that's another potentially very impactful application, and also using some of these large language models to train on evolving cyber attack approaches, and kind of trying to at least keep pace as much as we can with these bad guys, so to speak, if not try to get a step ahead of them. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's interesting. I got a research note which should hopefully come out today, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes. Dave Raffo and I wrote about some of the adoption that Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is seeing. They issued a press release this week around some of the work they're doing with Mosaic ML and some of the performance stats that we're starting to see. We were at HPE Discover. They've announced infrastructure for GPU access. I think we're going to see all of the vendors over the next probably 2 or 3 months bring in a real focus on how you get access to these GPUs as a service for enterprise workloads. And then when you factor in, I had a conversation with Kirk Skaugen, the SVP over at Lenovo, the focus that he's seeing coming through into the pipeline of business they've gotten. You're starting to see that pivot towards AI being the biggest workload. And I mean, Lenovo's got huge market share in servers. So, that's a lead indicator for me of where the rest of the industry is going to go. I think all of these vendors are going to be building out GPU-powered sort of infrastructure. And, then you see NVIDIA talking about their backlog and their pipeline. That kind of gives you a further lead indicator. And that you don't build out all this infrastructure on the sort of field of dreams model of, we'll just put it all out there and, hope that somebody uses it. The enterprises must be asking for it from these CSPs, managed service providers, and from Prem. And that's what's driving this whole market around enterprise AI for me. It's kind of end user demand, the vendors building out the infrastructure, and then NVIDIA just crushing it from a GPU supply chain perspective.
The other thing is, and since I do play into, the data side of the house here, is that most of the training being done right now has been on information that's already been generated, their documents, their documentation, and language models, etc. So is the amount of data that's actually needed is not as huge as we
small language models is what somebody said to me earlier this week.
Right, they're really, as compared to when you get video and imagery and that kind of stuff. However, expect that the next wave that's going to hit to train these models is going to we'll be bringing in more visual and visual videos, whatever, into the models to be able to doing more training. And so that would be the next wave that happens. And that was where this is going to explode. One of the sessions I sat through had some big visionaries using the term explorers, literally explorers. They had somebody that was an astronaut there, somebody that was the deep sea guy, and then also somebody that was been talking about, has been in AI for 20 years. And she looked like she was 30 years old, so I'm not sure how long she's really been doing this. And she said 20 years, I'm like going, you only look 30. So, anyway, but she was talking about the big trends, about what she's expecting to see over the next 2 years. And that was the one thing I picked up on that she said, is that this is coming, and this is why I believe it's coming. So it's kind of like, okay, let's watch and see where this is going to be, 2024, as soon as the end of 2024, in the
Yeah, I think we're only at the beginning of this. This is how it feels. I mean, so one of the key takeaways from my conversation with Kirk was 52-week lead times on some of these GPUs, and they're sold out for the next year. If you think about that, it's kind of crazy that's how much the demand is, and that's how early we are.
Yeah.
So we'll be watching it on future episodes. We'll be talking about it. I mean, I don't think we're going to be going anywhere soon. We're going to be talking about this for months ahead. Is the impression I get.
All right, folks.
That we will be.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
All right.
God, I didn't think we had 30 minutes of VMware. There you go.
There we go.
We needed Yeti coolers from VMware for this show.
They gave me a cup to take with, and I just didn't have room in my bag.
Come on, Camberley.
That's
sorry, Shirley.
Always the struggle, right?
Next week, Shirley will give you some love. How does that sound? Come on.
We'll need to get a rotating lineup of tumblers.
Okay, there we go. Oh, wait a second.
We're accepting submissions.
My former company, formerly known as the Evaluator Group, just for you.
I think I have mine kicking around, Camberley, so we'll have to keep those in rotation too, for sure. All right. Well, Camberley, Steven, this was a lot of fun, very insightful as always. We want to thank everyone for listening and joining. Please make sure that you like and subscribe and all of that good stuff so you don't miss a future conversation and you kept up to date. And we look forward to the next conversation. Thanks so much.